Hi, this is Chief Education Officer Bill Olson, and welcome to another Merrimack School District update. First, I want to wish all of you a very happy, healthy new year as we have turned the calendar now to the year 2025. Every year seems to go by a little bit faster, and that's true in terms of our school work that we do. We seem to be engaged in budgeting for many, many months, and as we are right now. Filming this in the beginning of January 2025, and we are right in the heart of preparation, presentation, discussions about the fiscal 2026 school budget. That is for the school year 2025-2026. I want to give you a little bit of insight because I think it's important to have you hear from me, who is the person responsible for preparing a budget, along with our other administrators in the central office, our leadership team, and our entire staff. What goes into the preparation of the school district budget, with the presentation to the school board and the school board's request being passed on to the budget committee in Merrimack. You know, we began the budget process early on this year, back in early October, because we wanted to present the budget to the school board prior to Christmas, and we were able to accomplish that. Some people are interested in what goes into the development of a school department budget. Do you just take last year's number and add on some inflationary factor and bring that to the school board? And the answer to that is no. We take a very careful, very methodical approach to building our budget. And I will explain to you what some of the variables are that go into the construction of the budget. First, we have a goals meeting every year in June. By we, I mean the central office administration and the school board. We have a facilitator who works with us to keep the conversation going, keep the conversation focused on what are the essential priorities that have either emerged or are emerging and that we may need to address in terms of staffing, programs, or services, or all of the above. That meeting, as I said, is held in June of every year. Brings about 4 or 5 goals that carry us through for the following fiscal year. We had the most recent meeting back in June of 2024, just last summer, and those goals are operational right now. In addition to that, last year we spent a full year with a committee of about 25, almost 30 people, putting together a 3-year strategic plan that covers operations, covers academic considerations in about 6 or 7 different domains. We put specific objectives, timelines, people responsible, the measurable results that would allow us to know that the goal and objective has been accomplished. And so that was quite an extensive document that also guides the development of our budget priorities and therefore the budgeting of our dollars. We look at any and all assessment data that we possess, English language arts, all types of literacy data, math data, science data. We look at the state assessment scores. We talk to our staff. We meet with the staff from every school prior to developing the budget. We engage them in a conversation, asking them, what are you seeing as the current and emerging needs of our students at the various grade levels at which they teach? What are we doing a good job at, but where do we need to improve? And that's always a very important question to ask, because we can always improve. The worst thing we can do, like any other organization, particularly those in the private sector, is sit back and say, well, I think we're doing a good job. We don't need to improve. That's when we stagnate, and that's when we do not provide programs and services in the best interest of our students and in the best interest of taxpayers. Because when we budget, we consider first and foremost the needs of our students, but we are also very much attuned to what represents a solid and legitimate return on investment to taxpayers in Merrimack. If you recall, last year we changed a couple of programs around that I didn't think were operating the way they should be. When asked at the deliberative session whether or not, if we were appropriated more money, would I restore those programs, my answer was no. Honestly, no, because they were not meeting the intent of what those programs were originally established to meet. So I want to let you know that we just don't rubber stamp things. We just don't continue programs or services year after year after year if they don't have a payback to students. And if they don't provide what I feel is a legitimate return on your tax dollar investment. None of us are here to waste your money. And that's my promise to you. We will not, in any way, shape, or form, do things that will represent a less than solid and less than robust return on your investment, acting in the best interest of our students. So we had those listening sessions with our staff. They provide very valuable information to us. We looked at the NEASC report, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, their accreditation process of the high school. What were the findings of that, and how can they be incorporated into our planning in terms of establishing priorities, in terms of where we need to budget monies, where we may need to reduce monies in our budget. Because we look at programs, all of our programs, carefully each year. We are driven certainly also by New Hampshire state or Department of Education mandates. Many times there are mandates that come forward requiring certain programs or services or alterations and changes that we are required to make. The problem is that oftentimes those are not accompanied by any additional state aid. And as I mentioned previously, we analyze every phase of our operations. We just don't engage in what's called incremental budgeting. Well, if we got $10 million this year, give us $11 million next year and we'll find something good to do with that $11 million. That doesn't work. That doesn't benefit students. It doesn't benefit you as a taxpayer. So we do an assessment of all programs and services. Are they meeting the needs of students? Are they providing an adequate return and a robust return to taxpayers? We do an analysis of our projected student enrollment. Our enrollment has been declining, as has the enrollment in most school districts across New Hampshire and in many places across the United States. Interestingly, New Hampshire has one of the lowest birth rates, about 8.2 births per 1,000 population in the entire nation. I've been somewhat of a student of demographic data for many, many years, for decades, quite honestly. The one thing I've come to realize, and most people who engage in demographic analysis will tell you, is although enrollments are not entirely predictable with 100% accuracy, they do tend over a period of time to be cyclical because of the regeneration of the population, the decline and increase in population that happens periodically. What we're seeing is sometimes couples holding off getting married until a little bit later in their ages, having fewer children and choosing to have fewer children. Some people are choosing not to have children. What's interesting is years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, many enrollments in school districts across New England and across the country were higher at that point in time, with probably 1/2 the number of families that were in a community at any one point in time, which says certainly that the number of children per family, the birth rate, was higher back years ago than it is right now for a variety of reasons. So we keep our eyes on enrollment carefully. Sometimes people think, well, if you lose 100 students that automatically means you can cut 3, 4, 5 staff. You can cut a school bus or multiple school buses, and that may not be the case. And let me tell you why. That reduction of 100 students may be over 12 different grade levels and doesn't have enough of an impact to allow us to reduce a staff member or members. Those 100 students may be distributed across the town over 20 different bus routes, which means that we can't make, with that marginal reduction in students, there isn't enough per every one bus to allow us to reduce a bus. So that's something I ask you to keep an eye on. Even though there may be a reduction in enrollment, the distribution of that reduction may be such that we find it difficult or impossible to reduce staffing or transportation or any other ancillary service. We're not trying to keep any more staff than we necessarily need. We're not trying to keep any more buses than we need. But we know what we can do to provide good, solid educational services and safe transportation to students both to school and back home again. We want to maintain reasonable class size. Former Tennessee Governor Lamar Hunt, many years ago, decades ago, engaged in a study referred to generically as the Tennessee study, which showed that there was a correlation between lower class sizes and higher academic achievement. The idea of 20, 21, 22 students in a class compared to 27, 28 makes a major difference in terms of a teacher's ability to know the students, to work with them, to encourage them, to understand their areas of strength and their areas of weakness where they need a little bit more work. Makes a huge difference. We need to make sure that we have a curriculum at all levels that is robust, that provides the rigor and the relevance to our students. Rigor meaning that it's challenging, that it's engaging, that allows for collaborative and action-based learning activities, that inspires and motivates students, that provides relevance to them in that curriculum that is selected by our assistant superintendent and our staff, and they've done an outstanding job at that, represents great relevancy to a student's life. You know, sometimes you and I, in our education, particularly when we were younger, would sometimes ask, what do we need to learn this for? What we need to do is make sure that we provide a curriculum to students that allows them to understand the purpose of that in their life and the importance of that to their development as a person and as a future employee in America and throughout the world. That's extraordinarily important. So we look at curriculum and the selection of curriculum for its rigor, for its relevance. Does it meet applicable standards, whether they're state or federal standards? And does that curriculum align with those standards? You know, we review our technology efforts. Technology is an area where there's, you don't put one foot in the water. Every school system has to jump in and be committed to it, because everything runs through technology in this world right now, as we know, and will continue to do that, with the complicating factor of artificial intelligence being added to the process of education. We have to adequately understand that and prepare our staff, provide training to them, provide training to all of us in terms of how artificial intelligence will impact not only the instructional process, but our administration of the school system and general school system operations. We want to make sure that we have clean, healthy, safe facilities, and that we have done our due diligence with respect to school security and making every effort to keep our students and our staff safe. Very importantly, one of the drivers of our budget is our need to provide competitive compensation and benefits to our staff. This is something that is statutorily required. We don't have the leverage like a private sector company has oftentimes to say to an employee, well, if you don't like the salary you're earning here, you can go find a job somewhere else. We have to sit down and bargain in good faith with our unions. That's not unique to Merrimack, it's nationwide. Okay, it's nothing new to this profession, but it does help shape the nature of our budget requests. We have made a commitment to increase the level of professional development to our staff, not only the frequency but the nature of the content, to make sure that the professional development is relevant to what we're doing at all grade levels and all curriculum disciplines. When I first started here about 4 years ago now, we had no early release days. Our school board and our budget committee and all of you have been good enough to support 5 early release days now that have been crucial to allowing our staff to learn about the new curriculum initiatives, but also to conduct mandatory professional development in terms of suicide prevention and bullying. That is, those two trainings are mandated by the state also. We want to make sure that we can conduct a responsible capital improvement program. When a facility opens, it can't exist for 10, 15, 20, 25 years with no capital or maintenance improvements. It's our responsibility to maintain well-operating schools that operate as efficiently as possible with the health and safety of students in mind. So I wanted to present you a little bit of a background about how our budget is developed. There's a methodology to it. It's not haphazard. It's not with a disregard for taxpayers. We do what we feel is necessary to meet the priority academic and developmental needs of our students, pre-K through grade 12. Not only our regular education students, but our special education students. And last night we had a budget committee meeting, and a parent happened to ask if the increase in funding and the increasing costs for special education, which every school district is experiencing, if that's taking monies away from students who are not disabled and are not in special education. And the answer to that unequivocally is no. Our job is to educate every student, and every student as responsibly and as effectively as possible. And we don't play one group of students against another. And I know that was not that parents' intent. It wasn't taken that way. But I just want to clarify that our special education costs increasing across school district across New England, across the nation? Yes, they are. But it does not come at the expense of students who are not in special education. You know, that brings me to the point also of the fact that for this upcoming year, we are expecting a decrease in the state reimbursement for certain special education costs. The state doesn't reimburse all costs, but they reimburse a certain portion of high-cost students. That makes it very difficult. And I must say that the strain on taxpayers in every community is because of the revenue-raising limitations in New Hampshire. And I worked for 50 years in Massachusetts, and I know about revenue-raising limitations. We are under the constraints of Proposition 2.5, and I won't get into that because that was in the past in my career. But in New Hampshire, one of the attractive features of New Hampshire is it has no sales tax and no state income tax. But what that means on the other side of that story is that the cost of municipal and school services is borne by property taxes, local property taxes. And if you have tax classification between commercial, industrial, and residential, and there's a decrease like there was last year in Merrimack of about $70 million in the levy valuation of commercial industrial properties, that money, unfortunately, is made up by increasing taxation to the homeowners. You know, the state of New Hampshire is last in the country in its support of public education. Something has to change. Something of a structural, revenue-raising nature has to change down the road. I wouldn't say that without deeply, deeply believing that, because I know that's kind of a lightning rod type of comment to make. But you can only sustain operations in any type of school district or municipal operation for just so long with a very limited revenue base. And so, you know, when people run for office and they say, there's not going to be any new taxes, or even at the federal level, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to put Americans back to work. That's great, that's honorable. But what they need to say also is, where's the money going to come from? Because that's what you don't hear. And that's what you need to hear. What are the repercussions of limited capabilities of revenue generation? So keep an eye on that. I know you'll pay attention to that. We pay attention to that all the time in government, in school district operations, because it's the lifeline of being able to provide you or your families and your children, in our case, in the school district, with excellent services. Because we're preparing your students for tomorrow, your children for tomorrow, to be productive citizens with good incomes and good jobs that can compete not only domestically but internationally. And that's the key. We're not only competing with neighborly districts, we're competing with students from around the world, as you've known for a number of years. So I'll get off my soapbox with respect to the issue of revenue. I want to point to the fact that if you look on our website, you'll find this PowerPoint presentation of that we made to the school board, of the 2025-2026 administrative budget request. The school board has deliberated, and they spent a lot of time reviewing the budget and discussions with us, and they have made some reductions to the budget, and that budget has been passed on to the budget committee. So last night, which was January 7th, we had our first meeting with the budget committee, began to answer some questions. We will continue that process throughout the next month and a half before the recommended budget from the budget committee goes to the deliberative session and then to the voters. Excuse me. When I had a recent meeting with some of the members of the budget committee, Budget Committee Chair Jen McCormick asked if we could put together a list of some of the improvements that we have made in the last 4 years to the school district. And I'm very proud of these improvements. When I started here in 2021, I took a look at our school district, understood very quickly that we had excellent, and we still have an excellent staff. That's the strong point of our school district. It's a strong point of any school district. But our curriculum was aging, wasn't current, wasn't particularly relevant in some respects. And so we set about to make major changes in our curriculum from kindergarten through grade 12. We spent a lot of time, and we spent some money improving the curriculum, but you'll see those improvements paying off in higher test scores and higher achievement levels for our students. So we have placed on our webpage also this brief, it's about 4 or 5 pages, improvements to the Merrimack School District. I'm hoping that you'll take a few minutes to review that. We've broken it down into the operational improvements that we've made. Another category is curriculum and student-focused improvements. We have improvements related to school safety, school security, and we have improvements made to our personnel, human relations function, and staff development. We've done a lot of work. We've been able to do that work with the cooperation of our school board, the budget committee, and you. And I want to thank you for that. The appropriation of funds is never particularly easy in any community, but you've had confidence in us, and I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that we continue to earn your confidence and your respect. And no, we will never be able to meet everyone's specific needs. Sometimes they're more than what we are able to accomplish based on a financial or operational basis. But our job is to meet as many needs as we possibly can. So I ask that you take a little bit of time, because this is the time, and I'm not being specific to Merrimack, but across the country, where people will engage in emotional hyperbole, will float out information that is probably not accurate and designed to sometimes confuse voters. That does a great disservice to the people of any community in our country. I will always invite you to call or stop in if you have specific questions about what we're doing and how we're doing it, what we're budgeting for, what we're not budgeting for. My job is to be honest with you in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And if we're doing it well, or I'm also going to tell you if we're not doing something well and we need to improve. That's our promise to you. That's our commitment to you, because you expect integrity and honesty, and that's what we expect to deliver to you. Now, I know I've gone on for a while, but this is a very, very important process. It's high stakes when it comes to the programs and services that we want to put together in the best interest of your children. Thank you for watching. Bill Olson, Chief Education Officer, and I look forward to seeing you next time.